There was a man who owned nothing, answered to no one, and was feared by an emperor. And if you stay until the end of this, you will understand why that same emptiness is the exact thing missing from your life right now. His name doesn't matter yet. What matters is this. 2,000 years before self-help gurus started selling 5-step morning routines, a group of thinkers figured out something so uncomfortable that most people still refuse to hear it today. You are not weak because life is hard. You are weak because you have outsourced your entire sense of self to things you don't control. Your mood depends on a message that hasn't arrived. Your worth depends on a number on a screen, a promotion that hasn't come, a person who hasn't texted back. You have built your entire identity like a house with no foundation, standing on rented land, and you call the shaking anxiety, when really it's just physics. Anything built on borrowed ground will eventually fall. The Stoics saw this trap 3,000 years ago, and they built a way out of it, not through positivity, not through hustle, not through pretending everything is fine, but through something far more radical: total ownership. Not ownership of things, ownership of yourself. And that is what this is about, becoming a master of one. Not a master of many trades, not a master of trends, not a master of what everyone else is doing. A master of exactly one thing: your own mind, your own reactions, your own life, built entirely by your own hands, needing nothing external to hold it up. This is the self-built life, and it starts with a truth most people spend their whole lives avoiding. Nobody is coming to save you. And that is actually the best news you will ever receive, because it means nobody can take you down either. Picture Rome at the height of its power, drowning in gold, slaves, conquest, and spectacle. In the middle of that noise sat a man named Epictetus, born into slavery, his leg permanently broken by a master who twisted it just to test him. And legend says as the bone snapped, he simply said, calmly, "You will break my leg." And when it broke, he added, "Did I not tell you?" No scream, no plea, no collapse. That single moment holds the entire philosophy you are about to learn. Because Epictetus was not numb, he was not superhuman, he was something far more useful to you. He had already decided, long before the pain arrived, exactly which parts of his life belonged to
Thus,
him and which
we
parts
must
did not.
conclude that virtue is
His
not
leg
merely a
belonged to
state
his
of
master.
being, but a
His
habit of
response
the
to
soul.
the pain belonged to him, and nothing, no chain, no whip, no empire, could touch that second part. This is the dichotomy of control, the single idea the entire Stoic system is built on, and once you actually absorb it, you cannot unsee it in your own life. Somewhere right now, you are losing sleep over something that was never yours to control in the first place. What someone thinks of you, whether you get chosen, whether the economy holds, whether people notice your effort, and somewhere else, something that is entirely yours. Your discipline, your standards, your next decision is sitting completely neglected because you convinced yourself it doesn't matter as much as the outcome. The Stoics flip that order completely. They say the outcome is almost irrelevant. What matters, the only thing that has ever mattered, is the quality of the choice you made walking into it. This is not resignation. This is not just don't care. This is the opposite of giving up. It is the most demanding form of responsibility a human being can take on, because it means you can no longer blame the world for what happens to you, only judge yourself on how you meet it. Marcus Aurelius, arguably the most powerful man alive at the time, ruler of an empire stretching across 3 continents, did not write his private journal, the one we now call Meditations, to teach anyone else. He wrote it to remind himself, every single morning, before plagues, wars, betrayals from his own family, that none of the external chaos could touch the one territory he actually owned, his own judgment of events. He would wake up and write, essentially, "Today I will meet ungrateful, violent, deceitful people, and none of that changes who I choose to be." That is not a man born calm. That is a man who built calm, brick by brick, the same way you build muscle, or a business, or a skill, through repetition, through failure, through choosing the harder response over and over until it became who he was. This is what self-built actually means in this philosophy. It doesn't mean isolated. It doesn't mean cold. It means constructed, deliberately, painfully, on purpose, rather than inherited from circumstance, from culture, from whatever emotional weather happened to roll through that day. Most people are simply reacting to their lives. The Stoics were building theirs, and the tools they used to do it are not locked behind ancient Greek or dusty libraries. They are shockingly practical, almost mechanical, and by the end of this 4-part journey, you will have every single one of them in your hands. How to separate what's yours from what isn't, how to turn obstacles into fuel instead of evidence against you, how to face death, loss, and failure without flinching, and how to build a version of yourself so solid that nothing external can shake it loose. But before any of that, you need to sit with the discomfort we started with, because growth never begins in comfort. You need to admit that most of your suffering, right now, is not coming from the world. It's coming from your judgments about the world. Judgments you have the power to change the second you decide to stop handing your peace over to things you were never meant to hold. In Part 2, we go deeper into the man who was born a slave and became the philosophical father of an emperor's own private journal, and the brutal 3-part test he built that can dismantle almost any modern anxiety in under 60 seconds. Stay with this. Before we go further, answer this honestly. Think of the one thing that has been eating at you for days, maybe weeks. The thing that replays in your head right before you fall asleep, and hold it in your mind, because by the end of this part you are going to run it through a test so old and so simple that it will feel almost insulting how much power it has over something that has been quietly wrecking you. We left off with a boy born into slavery in a small town in what is now Turkey. A boy with no name of his own worth recording, no rights, no property, not even ownership of his own body, and yet this boy, Epictetus, would go on to become one of the most influential minds in human history, studied by emperors, quoted by generals, still assigned in universities 2,000 years later. Not because he escaped suffering, but because he figured out exactly what suffering could and could not touch. After he was eventually freed, he opened a school, and the core of everything he taught can be boiled down to a single question. He trained his students to ask themselves constantly, almost obsessively, about every single thing that disturbed them. Is this up to me, or is this not up to me? That's it. That is the whole test. 3 categories, and only one of them is actually yours. First, your body not up to you. It gets sick, it ages, it gets injured. It responds to things you never asked for. Second, your reputation, what people think of you, whether you're liked, whether you're chosen, whether you're remembered, kindly not up to you, because that lives entirely inside other people's heads, shaped by their moods, their histories, their misunderstandings, none of which you can reach in from the outside and control no matter how hard you try. Third, external events themselves, the economy, the weather, other people's choices, whether the flight gets delayed, whether the promotion goes to someone else, none of it up to you. Now here is the part that changes everything, the part that Epictetus insisted on above all else. Your judgments, your desires, your aversions, your effort, and your response to every single thing on that first list entirely, completely, 100% up to you, no exceptions, no matter what circumstances surround it. Take the thing you were holding in your mind a moment ago. Run it through the test right now. If it lives in the first category, someone's opinion of you, an outcome you're waiting on, a diagnosis, a decision someone else made, Epictetus would tell you, almost coldly, that spending your energy there is like being furious at rain for falling. Technically understandable, completely useless. But if any piece of it, how you're showing up, what effort you're putting in, how you're choosing to interpret it, falls into the second category. That piece is where every ounce of your attention should go, because that piece is a lever you can actually pull. Most people get this backwards their entire lives. They pour everything they have into controlling category 1. Obsessively checking whether someone replied, obsessively trying to manage what strangers think of them online, obsessively trying to force an outcome that was never in their hands to begin with, while completely neglecting category 2, the one area guaranteed to respond to their effort. This is why Epictetus called most human misery self-inflicted, not because people are foolish, but because nobody ever taught them where the actual line was. He used to tell his students to imagine a stage play. You do not choose the role you're handed. Rich man, beggar, ruler, cripple. That casting decision belongs to something far bigger than you. Call it fate, chance, the universe, whatever you like. But the moment the curtain rises, how you play that role, with dignity or with self-pity, with effort or with resentment, that performance is entirely yours, and it is the only thing being judged at the end. This reframe alone dismantles most modern anxiety in real time, because so much of what we call anxiety is simply the mind trying to control a role it was never given control over. You cannot control whether you get the job. You can control how prepared you walk in. You cannot control whether they love you back. You can control whether you showed up as someone worth loving. You cannot control the diagnosis. You can control how you meet each morning after it. This is not detachment from life. It's the opposite. It's the most intense form of engagement possible, because instead of scattering your energy across 100 things you can't touch, you pour all of it into the handful of things you actually can, and something strange happens. When you do this consistently, the outcomes. You were originally desperate for start improving anyway, not because you controlled them directly, but because you finally stopped leaking energy into fear and started investing it into preparation, effort, and character. Marcus Aurelius took this exact framework and turned it into a daily practice, writing to himself each morning about the difficult people he was about to encounter, reminding himself in advance that their behavior belonged to them and his response belonged to him. This is precisely the tool we're building toward. Because knowing the theory changes nothing if you cannot apply it in the heat of a real moment. When someone insults you, when the news breaks badly, when your body is shaking with the very anxiety you claimed to understand 5 minutes ago. In part 3, we take this dichotomy off the page entirely and turn it into a physical practice the Stoics actually used daily. A technique called the view from above, along with the exact obstacle, as fuel method Marcus Aurelius used to face betrayal, plague, and war without ever losing himself, and will show you precisely how to run it the next time your own life tries to knock you down. Stay with this. Right now, wherever you're sitting, whatever is stressing you, I want you to imagine a camera pulling back from your body, up through the ceiling, above the building, above the city, above the country, above the curve of the earth itself, until you can see the whole planet as one small blue stone hanging in silence. And hold that image, Because this is not a meditation trick. This is a 2,000-year-old Stoic weapon, and by the time you understand how Marcus Aurelius used it while commanding an empire on fire, you will never look at your own problems the same way again. This technique has a name, the view from above, and Marcus wrote about it constantly in his private notebook, not as poetry, but as an actual method he used to shrink problems back down to their real size. He would picture himself rising above his own army, above Rome, above the Mediterranean, watching entire wars, entire migrations of peoples, entire generations rise and vanish like waves on a beach. And from that height, the specific insult he'd received that morning, the betrayal from a general he trusted, even the plague killing thousands around him, all of it became visible as what it actually was, small, temporary, one flicker in an ocean of time that had already swallowed empires far greater than his, and would swallow this one too. This is not about feeling insignificant in a depressing way. It's the opposite. It's liberating, because most of what destroys our peace only has power over us at close range. Zoom in on a single argument with your sister, and it can consume your entire week. Zoom out to the scale of your whole life, and it's a blip. Zoom out further to the scale of human history, and it barely exists at all. The Stoics weren't telling you nothing matters. They were telling you to stop granting cosmic importance to things that are only local weather, so that you can save your real energy for what genuinely deserves it: your character, your integrity, the next choice in front of you. And Marcus used this specifically as a tool against anger, because he noticed something almost mathematical. Anger always requires close range vision. Nobody stays furious at someone while genuinely holding the thought that both of them will be dust within a century, that the empire itself will fall, that the sun someday burns out entirely. The view from above isn't escapism. It's recalibration. It resets the lens back to something honest instead of the distorted, panic-sized version your nervous system hands you by default. Now take that same zoomed-out clarity and point it at obstacles themselves, because this is where Marcus built what might be the single most quoted piece of Stoic writing in existence. A passage so dense it's often just called, "The obstacle is the way," though he never used those exact words. What he actually wrote was that our actions can be impeded, but our will and our ability to adapt cannot, and that the very obstacle blocking one path becomes fuel for a different one, because the mind can turn any obstruction into material for itself. Picture fire thrown onto a heap of rubbish. A weak flame gets smothered by it, but a strong, established fire consumes that rubbish instantly and actually grows brighter and taller because of it, using the very thing that would have killed a smaller flame as fuel to burn hotter. That is the entire method. Not positive thinking, not pretending the obstacle isn't real, actually using its exact material, its weight, its friction, its inconvenience, as the substance your response is built from. A soldier blocks your path, so you go around him, and he becomes the reason you find a better route. A setback costs you the job, so the humility it forces on you becomes the reason you prepare properly for the next one. A friend betrays you, so the clarity it gives you about who deserves your trust becomes sharper judgment for the rest of your life. Marcus wasn't writing this from comfort. He wrote it while burying friends to plague, managing constant frontier wars, dealing with a wife's alleged infidelity, and a trusted general's outright rebellion against his throne. And through all of it, his journal doesn't read like a man in denial. It reads like a man actively converting damage into direction in real time, page by page. This is the practical fusion of everything we've covered so far. The dichotomy of control tells you where your power actually lies. The view from above resets your sense of scale, so you stop overreacting to things that don't deserve it. And the obstacle? As fuel method gives you the actual mechanism for turning whatever life throws at you into material for your own growth, instead of evidence of your defeat. None of this requires the obstacle to be small or fair. In fact, it works best precisely when the obstacle is enormous and completely unfair, because the bigger the block of wood, the bigger the fire it can become, once you know how to burn it correctly. Try this the next time something derails your day. Name the obstacle exactly as it is, no exaggeration and no minimizing. Then ask what it makes available to you that wasn't available a moment ago. Patience you didn't know you had, a redirection you wouldn't have taken otherwise, evidence for a decision you needed to make anyway. And you will find, almost every time, that the obstacle was quietly handing you something the entire time. You just weren't trained to look for it. In Part 4, we bring every piece of this together into the final and most uncomfortable Stoic practice of all: the deliberate contemplation of death itself, memento mori, and why the same emperor who ruled the known world spent his mornings reminding himself he could die before nightfall, not out of morbidity, but as the final key to building a life that finally truly belongs to you. Stay with this. Somewhere, right now, someone is taking their last ordinary morning without knowing it, pouring coffee, checking their phone, annoyed about something that will not matter to them by tonight. And the Stoics would not want you to look away from that thought. They would want you to sit in it, because the final piece of this entire philosophy, the piece that ties together everything we've built across 3 parts, is the one most people spend their whole lives running from: the deliberate, daily contemplation of death, what the Romans called memento mori, remember you will die. Marcus Aurelius, ruler of the largest empire on earth, a man with more reasons than almost anyone in history to distract himself with pleasure and denial, opened many of his private journal entries with some version of the same reminder: that he could leave this life at any moment, and that this fact should shape not his fear, but his conduct right now, today. This was not depression dressed up as philosophy. It was the opposite. It was the sharpest tool the Stoics had for cutting through everything false in a life. Think about how differently you would spend today if you knew, with total certainty, that you had 1 year left. The grudge you're holding would probably dissolve instantly. The version of yourself you've been performing for other people's approval would suddenly feel absurd. The small, cowardly compromises you make to avoid discomfort would suddenly look like the real threat, not the discomfort itself. Death, held at the right distance, works like the view from above turned inward. It strips away everything borrowed, everything performed, everything built for an audience, and leaves only the question that actually matters: is this a life I built, or a life that happened to me? This is the final test of the self-built life, and it's the reason the Stoics treated death not as an ending to fear, but as a deadline that gives meaning its edge. A task with no deadline gets pushed forever. A life with no sense of its own ending gets postponed the same way. The real conversation postponed, the real work postponed, the real honesty postponed, always for some future version of you that memento mori insists may simply never arrive. Seneca, another towering figure in this tradition, wrote to a friend that it is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste a great deal of it. That life is long enough if you know how to use it, but most of it slips away in distraction, regret, and anxious rehearsal of things that never happen. He wasn't warning people away from death. He was warning them away from sleepwalking through the very finite thing they'd been given. This is why the Stoics practiced this so deliberately, instead of avoiding it the way most of the modern world does. We build entire industries around distraction from mortality. Entertainment, notifications, endless scrolling, precisely so we never have to sit with the one fact that would instantly reorganize our priorities correctly. The Stoics did the reverse. They sat with it every morning on purpose, and it made them harder to shake, not more anxious. Because once you've genuinely made peace with the worst possible outcome, everything smaller than that outcome loses its grip on you. This is the final thread connecting everything across this entire journey. We started with Epictetus, born a slave, who taught that the only thing truly yours is your own judgment and response, regardless of what happens to your body or your circumstances. We moved to the dichotomy of control, the practical test for separating what deserves your energy from what is simply noise disguised as urgency. We built the view from above, learning to shrink oversized problems back down to their honest scale, and the obstacle as fuel method, learning to burn whatever blocks you as material for your own growth, instead of treating it as evidence against you. And now, finally, Memento Mori closes the circle by reminding you that all of this only matters because your time to practice it is not infinite. Which is not a grim thought. It is the most motivating thought available to a human being, because it means every single day you get to choose your response is a kind of quiet victory, not a guarantee. A gift. One you were not owed and will not always have. Master of one was never about mastering many crafts, or many skills or collecting achievements to display to other people. It was always about mastering exactly one thing, the only thing that was ever fully in your hands to begin with yourself. Your judgments, your responses, your character under pressure, built brick by brick the same slow, unglamorous way Marcus built his own calm inside a burning empire, the same way Epictetus built his freedom while still in chains. Nobody is coming to hand you this. No external achievement will substitute for it. No relationship will complete it for you. No circumstance will arrive perfect enough to finally let you begin. The beginning is always available. Starting the next moment something goes wrong, and you get to choose, once again, how you meet it. That choice, repeated daily, is the entire self-built life. Not a life free from hardship, not a life without loss, without pain, without unfairness. The Stoics never promised that and never wanted it, because a life like that would never have forged anyone worth remembering. What they promised instead was simpler and harder. That whatever life brings you, you can meet it as someone who already decided, long before it arrived, exactly who they were going to be. That decision is available to you the moment this ends. Take it. If this series gave you even one moment of clarity today, that's the whole point of Stoic wisdom. It was never meant to sit in old books. It was meant to be lived. If you found value in this, hit like, subscribe for more of this, and drop a comment below telling me which part hit you hardest. Epictetus's dichotomy of control, the view from above, obstacle as fuel, or memento mori, because your answer might be exactly what someone else scrolling past this needs to read today. Until next time, remember, you don't need to master everything. You just need to master one thing: yourself.